I'll move over to the next person on my screen, Your Highness Sheikha Intisar AlSabah. If you could introduce yourself and tell us where you are in the world today.
So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am speaking from Kuwait. I'm actually in my office. That is lacking in a bit of AC. It's very warm outside. So if I start shining, that's because it's quite warm. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would like to start by just saying a few things about me, introducing myself to whoever is watching and listening. Well, I went through an abusive marriage, and then I became, well, within a year, I became a refugee. So leaving an abusive marriage and suddenly becoming a refugee because of the Iraqi invasion on Kuwait was a little bit too much for my I think I was 24, 25 at the time. That was, I think, a little bit too much with two little girls. So that was quite a shock to my system. And it took me many, many years and many therapies to get out of it. And this is what catapulted me into working using different methodologies of psychological intervention to have changes in our community, but also in the Arab world. So I started with I had a very crazy idea about 8-9 years ago to use positive psychology it was very crazy. Everyone thought it was bonkers. I loved it. I continued, and it became very successful. So we used positive psychology in Kuwait. We started in the beginning using it all over, in masses, in malls, and telling people about positive psychology and the effect of looking at life in a different manner and how it can change one's life, but it also can change one's hope factor. Let's call it the hope factor. And from that, we went into schools, and just before the lockdown with COVID, we were in 47 schools, training about 500 teachers to implement a positive psychology curriculum that we have come up with professionals in positive psychology, and they were training close to 12,000 students. Now, the changes that we saw in the students is what encouraged me later on to start Intisar Foundation, which I'm going to be speaking about in 1 second. So the students a lot of students started being more kind to other students, the aggressiveness stopped, they started liking their school more, they started liking the teacher more, they started having better grades, bullying went down, smoking went down. So there's a lot of crazy things happened when people started seeing the world from a better lens or a better perspective, and that always, and then we started another initiative where we used applied theater to combat bullying in middle school children. And even with that, once they connected with their emotions, once they were allowed to role play, we saw the decline in bullying and the rise in kindness. And that, then I started my third initiative, which is supporting the self-empowerment of Arab women affected by wars and conflict and crisis to become peace builders in the Arab world. Another crazy idea when we started with, because we use drama therapy, it's a different form, but a very credible form of therapy, again, allowing the women to use their voices, allowing the women to engage with their emotions. So I'll end it up with one thing. We've worked with 10-year-olds, we've worked with 10-year-old boys or girls in school, and we've worked with 80-year-old women in camps. All of them benefited from any kind of psychological intervention. The women in the camps, the women were working with small and medium enterprise, let's say, women affected by the Beirut port blast. And even with them, they have the means, they have the money, they have everything, but their mind is not with it. Their mind, it's like a TV screen that is just turning from one thing to the other. They're confused. Once we started supporting them, now they're more focused. They know what they want to do. So I'll start this, which is what I'll end it with in the last 3 minutes. we need to work with people on a psychological level. Giving them money is not enough. Telling them they're strong is never enough, because I'm looking at me. I have the money, I have the name, I have everything, yet I allowed myself to be abused. That's because I didn't have the inner capacity to stop it. And we've seen with our women, once they have the inner capacity to stop things, their life changes. To stop the thoughts in their heads, to stop their self-abuse. Therefore, what's reflected is the outside abuse. And I'll end it there, and I'll leave it to Dr. Nims. And thank you so much, Dr. Salma, for wearing what you're wearing. Kudos. Peace.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to think about the equality of access to resources, and in terms of building that plan, what are the foundations that we need, and having fair access to technology is a fundamental part of that. But I think, I guess to go on from there, on that theme of rebuilding, and to some of the points you made around conflict and war, I'm very interested to hear from Her Highness Sheikha Intisar AlSabah on the theme of rebuilding, how you think the international community can better support survivors of conflict and war to help them integrate back into society and rebuild their own equality.
I'm going to ask a question. Why should the international community support survivors? I mean, is there a reason that the international community would support survivors of war? And why should they or us support their integration into society? Basically, because if we don't, this will continue, this will grow. Inequality, war. To me, they're all different words to the same thing. Wars come from inequality. Inequality creates wars, internal, external, country-wise, inside the person. Why should we support the people to, number one, have more equality, but also to be integrated in society? Because we want a more peaceful world. We want to go on a panel like this and smile and say, oh my God, we did well. We were able to, close this, get down this fire, this war, this inequality, this abuse, whatever one wants to call it. So why should we support? And how we should support is, there's lots of ways, but again, going back to, the why is because we want to smile and think we're better human beings. Basically, that's why. We want to think that we have done something good in this world. And I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about countries. And countries who are doing it countries are actually run by people. Now, there's many different ways, but again, going back to my experience, and I'll talk about my experience, using different forms of creative therapies has a much bigger effect on the people, on the recipients, than normal, or let's say serious, and I call them serious psychological interventions. When we started looking at how to support Arab women affected by war, we looked at different, very, very credible, but different kinds of psychological interventions. But the taboo, the stigma, the backing away from all these interventions for many reasons is what stopped us from going down that same route. And so we went into drama therapy, or in schools we went to positive psychology, because they're creative. There is an aspect of adventure. They don't create any stigma, taboo to the people using them. And they have huge, great results when used. See, I'm asked all the time, what is the best way to support, if not women, let's say people who are in an internal turmoil caused by an external factor? And I love quantum physics. I love looking at frequencies of the brain, and I did a lot of biofeedback. And from that, I've learned that when we are serious, when we are serious in our pain, when we can't see hope, we cannot change. Positive psychology always says the more people look at things from a more positive perspective, the more avenues they have to better their life. Quantum physics has proved that the spectator influences the atom's trajectory. Isn't it by time we started supporting people to look at themselves, to look at their lives, to look at the world in a better way? Yes, sometimes life is difficult, but imagine if we could support everyone and inform them and let them know that if they just change the way they're looking at things, the things might change. And I'll talk about myself again. When I was a refugee, yes, I went through days where I felt really sorry for myself, really sorry. And I had 2 little girls and I didn't know what to do. I had no money. Yes, I had no money. It doesn't matter what I am now, but during that very short period between leaving Kuwait, which was about 2 weeks because we were hunted down by the Iraqis at the time, and getting enough money, I didn't have a lot of money. It was a short period, it was about a month or so, but that was enough for me because I've always had money. So what helped me was to have hope that my country will be back, that my daughters will grow, whatever hope it is. Some people can have more hope than others, but everyone needs hope. Everyone needs to have their mind clear enough to make sound decisions. Because if we don't do sound decisions, we make reactive decisions. When I'm angry, 100%, that's going to reflect on my daughters. I'm going to put all my wrath on them because I feel so angry. And the same with every person who feels victimized in this world. Refugees, people who are in a crisis, COVID survivors, people who are going through COVID and are unemployed now and they need to make ends meet. When we don't support them psychologically, mentally, emotionally, not only will they not be able to get out of it, but what's worse is they will pull everyone down with their anger. Hurt people hurt. Victims are the most vicious of people. Let's work on getting everyone out of the victim mentality and then let them be creators of their own life. No matter how small that creation is, it's better than allowing them to live forever feeling sorry for themselves and hurting everyone who doesn't see it.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. And yeah, I really appreciate the creativity that you mentioned there. I think that's really, really important. I think we've all had to become more creative in the things that we do during COVID. So now's the perfect time to really build on that creativity and to be more creative, to be bolder, and to continue that journey. Thank you. And I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to go straight across to Her Highness Sheikha Intisar AlSabah.
Thank you so much, Simon. I would like to read a little bit as my closing remark. I wrote an article and I'd like to read a couple of sentences from it. And it's empowering women economically does not merely start with providing them with financial support. It starts with removing the psychological barriers that are deeply embedded in them, which is what you spoke about, Lord Simon. Removing the psychological barriers allows every single person to be able to set goals, to work for the betterment of their lives and the betterment of their communities. And I would like to end it with quoting one of our most amazing women who lives in Shatila camp. She's Syrian, lives in Shatila camp in Lebanon. And I would just like to say a couple of, quote a couple of things she said. Before the sessions, I was closed off and resistant. I had pain and darkness within me. I was hostile and narcissistic with others. The sessions helped me to remove this negativity from within. The sessions also helped me with my children, who are the only thing that I love and that I still have following the war. I was not emotionally available to my older children, not even aware enough to notice them growing up around me. But I have changed with my youngest child, and I want to be more peaceful and giving to her. I also want to make up for not being there for my older children. The great news is, after 9 years of being in a refugee and having literally zero, with the amazing support of drama therapy, and we are blessed to have Fatma as one of our amazing success stories. She turned her life around, and now she is running a business with 35 other women, and a successful business too. So again, I will end this by saying we can give a lot of humanitarian aid, as much as we think is possible, but without combining it with psychological aid. And I don't like using the word aid, with psychological self-empowerment. There's no sustainability in what we're doing. The cycle will continue and continue and continue. And every time I'm asked to speak at any conference or anywhere, I always end it with, I call for every humanitarian aid agency to include psychological support as the biggest proponent in any intervention they do after a crisis or war. Because without the psychological aspect, we are creating victims. We are continuing their thoughts of being victimized, and therefore, because they feel victimized, they will victimize others. So if we want peace within ourselves because we see people thriving, if we want peace within our world because we want to stop wars, whatever one wants to call it, clashes, whatever one wants to call it, even abuse within families, we have to always start with psychological support, and not any normal psychological support. Let's not go to the dim and victim increasing psychological support where we can sit all day and speak about, oh my God, this one's hurt me. No, that's not the kind of psychological support we advocate for. We're talking about group psychological support where they realize they are all connected and they all have the same problems, and then they have immediate mentorship of how others have changed their lives.